Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Unity Center. I'll call it Unity Spiritual Center of Pflugerville. How's that sound? So anyway, we're here to talk today about the idea of inner peace, inner switch, a change in attitude. And part of that is, how do I make life work? We talked last week, we were talking about inner ease. There's a place in life where we can be happy, joyful. We call it bliss. Bliss is that step above happiness. Happiness can be yeah. But bliss is just an inner knowing that all is well. So how would I feel if all is well? And I knew tomorrow when I get up in the morning, the day will be wonderful, perfect. And so many times we get up dreading the day. Anybody familiar with Monday mornings? And it's that dread that we have, and we're so used to that dread, we don't even know that we're that way. So if you stop and think about the law of attraction, which says that which I think about, I create. When I get up on Monday morning with that dread, what am I creating for my day? It's a very interesting conversation, and I wanted to bring that in today. One of the things that I've been reading this week, and we had several copies of it last week, was a new book by Eric Pflugerville. Now, Eric Pflugerville passed away quite a while ago, but Mark Hicks, who's one of our friends up at the other church, he found a cassette tape in the archives in Unity Village, and he transcribed a whole workshop by Eric Pflugerville, which was done back in the 1980s. And then it's published as this book. And it's kind of fascinating, and I want to share it with you. A couple things. Right away in the opening, it says, we need a larger map. What he's talking about here is that when we look at something, we can look at it very, very focused. Like if you look at your neighborhood, you can look at your house. But the whole idea is to draw back and look at a big map. So our consciousness, it's like, I've lived in areas where my next door neighbors, I asked them, have you ever traveled? They said, yeah, we went one town over. Okay? And when I say have you traveled, have you been outside of the United States? And so everybody's consciousness is restricted to what they believe and what they have experienced. And so the idea is, how big is our map of the world in our mind? And it says, we need a larger thought of God. In other words, who is God? What is God? Where is God? And then it goes on and says, and a better, much bigger insight of ourselves. So number one, understanding God. Number two is understanding who we are with a bigger map of ourselves. Because we've been trained, at least I was in my fundamentalist religion, because not that I was a miserable sinner. I was full of guilt, and I was no good. Anybody? Anyway, I'm not going to go there. But the idea behind it is that when I'm a child of God, that implies that I have to be perfect and whole just as I am. And one of the problems with that is I've been trained to not think that. So how do I make a shift back to my original self with a capital S? And that's what this conversation is. So I would like to read a little bit of it to you. And I better put my glasses on. And I put my glasses in my pant pocket so I don't make noise. I think I did well. Those of you who don't know, when I reach in here, the microphone goes nuts. So, and this is on, if I'm not mistaken, this is on page 9. And Eric Butterworth says here, the desire to find and know God quite often misleads us to look for God or to look for something anthropomorphic, which is a personal kind of superhuman living on a cloud somewhere. Anybody agree that's the popular idea? That's the image of God, which means God is a superhuman, which is totally incorrect as far as we know. If you understand quantum physics, which I don't, but I get a few little ideas here, everything is at a vibration. Everything in the world is at a vibration. The chair you're sitting on is at a vibration. And the only difference between the chair and you is the vibration rate that it is at. So everything is vibration. Everything is vibration is what holds the universe together. And we call that an energy, or if you choose to call it God, whatever you choose to do it. But in quantum physics, there's also a thing called dark energy, which they say is everywhere present, and they don't know what it is. Interesting, isn't it? So, might that be a place from which we can understand God? And it says that God is everywhere present under all conditions, in all situations. So by definition, God is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, which means all powerful, all present, and all knowledge. So if that's true, God has to be everywhere present in this room and in every molecule that exists in the universe, just by definition. So where is God? Everywhere. And does that mean, and we are the expressions of God, which we'll get into a little bit. Then he goes on and says here, okay, God is not a person out there. In other words, God isn't outside of us, God is within us, which is a major step in the understanding of spiritual path. So it goes on and says, that's shocking to a lot of people. God is the presence that is ever present and all present, or put in a more complete sense, God is allness. So if you can open up your map to the universe and be part of the universe, God is everywhere present in the universe. Which means if I'm an expression of God, which he goes on to say, God is an allness in which I exist and you exist as an eachness. So each of us is part of the allness, and so we are part of the allness, which is everywhere present. So everybody take a deep breath and take that in. Okay? And that's a conversation that's difficult to talk about, because it's like there's no way to put your hands around that. There's no way to see it, to touch it, to feel it. And that's one of the problems that we talk about here, is the idea the only way to see God is to understand God, express God, and see it happen in your life. Anybody agree if you see things happen, you believe it? But it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes work to do that. So let me go on. I really like this book, by the way. We got 10 more coming in. Should have it next week. Thank you, Patrick. So then it goes on and says, God is an allness in which you exist as an eachness. In other words, to use the term expression, I am an expression of God, and you are an expression of God. And to express means to stand forth. So God stands forth from each one of us. That's why we say here that we are the hands, the mouth, the feet, the voice of God, which is what you heard Valerie use in her meditation. Now, the issue of that is believing. See, back in the original statement here, we need a larger thought of God. In other words, God is bigger than we could ever imagine, and a new insight of ourselves. So who are we? And who is God? Where is God? What is God? And the point here is to get our map bigger. Understand who we are in the context of allness. Okay? Takes time. Now, it goes on and says, all this and so much more standing forth as me. Make a great mental note of that word as. God expresses as me. As a matter of fact, let's say, if you can say this, let's just say this. God expresses as me. Together. God expresses as me. And notice I'm touching my heart. The reason we bring up the Heart Math Institute has been doing a lot of study. One of the things that folks, they are scientists out in California. They have spent years and they decided to prove that the heart had an impact in our lives. And that the heart was really the center of God in our being. And they started doing research. They are now connected with a lot of the major scientific organizations throughout the world. But they are now proving that the heart actually controls the mind. And that the heart gets an idea of a millisecond before the brain, so the heart influences the brain if we allow it to. So I'm talking today about an inner shift that has to take place. There's a language, the Course of Love, which we work with on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock, by the way, if you want to be part of what we do. Course of Love talks about a different language. Spiritual language of love, is different than the language of the world, anger, upset. The language of the world talks about fear, talks about doubt, talks about uncertainty, talks about you better know what you're doing before you do anything. Number 4, the world will beat you down. In other words, I have to fight. I'm in survival in the world. What else? See, all the negative parts are here in the world. Because that's the ego that has been telling us what's true. Problem is, it ain't true. Because in the beginning it says, we're created in the image and after the likeness of God. Does it say that? Yeah. If you want me to look it up, I'd be glad to do that. But the idea behind that is, if we really are, then how come all these issues occur? And the Bible's full of promises, all these promises, but they don't happen for me because I still struggle. I still have to worry. I still have disease. I have cancers on my nose. All that stuff that happens. I even have relationships that don't work. Okay, so that's the world, but there's another language over here, the language of spirit, which is love, okay, peace, joy, abundance, even abundance. How about wealth, happiness, health? So there's these two completely different states of being, and we are told, law of attraction, which is pretty well proven scientifically, that what I think about, I create. So I'm over here in this form of thinking, I'll call it the ego world, then we are creating the ego world's world for us, which is what we bought into. Because we're born into it. We get it when we are born. There's Paul called it the carnal mind. And the metaphor for me is the cloud, the iCloud, if you will, up there where you put all your computer stuff. There's an energy for good in the universe. This is Ernest Holmes. And there's an energy for good in the universe which surrounds us. And we don't see it, but it's part of the ethers. And the ethers are charged, I don't know how deep to go. If you're familiar with something called the Akashic Records, evidently, and there are people that can read these, everything we've ever said or thought is stored in a database out there. Okay, it's called the Akashic Records. So when we're born into this world, we're born into everybody's thoughts. Now, I understand there's 7 billion people in the world now. And what do you think the thinking is like of the people, the 9 billion people in the world right now? Is it love and appreciation, or is it fear, uncertainty, anger, revenge? See, it's over here. So that's the cloud of thoughts that we're in. And one of the things that happens is, a lot of you know that I used to do a lot of motivational speaking, but I can't do it anymore because it isn't just changing thought, because we have to overcome all this cloud of thought. We have to overcome a new way of being, which is the inner shift I want to talk about. So, I'm going to be over here. Okay? Or am I going to be over here? And it's an inner shift, is exactly what it is. The inner shift is one to love and the language. In the article I put out this week, which you picked up for me, I appreciate it. Okay? We were talking about the language of spirit. And I'm going to read these again. Okay? Our session, of course, of love addressed the inner shift it requires from one state of being to another state of being. The language of spirit talks about love, forgiveness. Hello? Anybody remember that? I'm still forgiven. I'm still working on some of my family. Anybody have that issue? I'm still working with some neighbors. Okay? Still working about those jerks in the political environment. Because they're screwing everything up. Okay? And when I think about that and talk about that, what am I creating? More of what I don't want, if you may understand that. That's the crazy psychology of this whole thing. Then it goes on and says, compassion. And there's, instead of criticizing, I understand. You know, we're all just walking out our beliefs. You know, somebody told us when I was at the age of 4, don't get your hoops up, Robert, you're going to struggle all your life. Okay? And that jerk, whoever it was, I'm still living with that. Okay? Now, I use that as an example. Okay? And we are full of those things. I think I've used before that my mother, God bless her, not her fault, because she grew up with it. So it's a compassion of forgiving. But she used to tell me, Bobby, don't eat too much, you'll get fat. So every time you eat, you what? You get fat. See, and we're run by these beliefs and we don't even know it. Okay? So it's letting go, it's adapting a new language and allowing the stored language to change into what I call love language or spirit language. Okay? Then it goes on and says, here, the world of spirit does not know fear. uncertainty, and doubt. The word of spirit does not encompass the ideas of anger, resentment, victimhood. Anybody familiar with that?
Oh, yeah.
So psychologists call this projection. Anything I have myself, I can't admit it, I have to project it on somebody else. So I have to get back at that jerk that did that to me, and I'm actually the one that did it to me, if you really start looking at these ideas. Okay, so it's forgiveness, and ultimately it's forgiveness of myself, or ourselves. And so there's all these words that we use, but they're just words that are implanted in our being. Anybody agree words mean things? And once we start, it's like using affirmations. I am complete and whole just as I am right now today. It's an affirmation we have used for years. The kingdom of heaven is within. Jesus was saying over and over and over again, I and the Father are one, which is what we're saying for you, that God, you are an expression of God, and you are one with the Father, Mother, God. And these are all concepts to take in as an individual and understand. Okay? John, I'll get back to you in a minute. Okay? So the idea here is the shift is facilitated by our willingness to pursue it. Here's the point. Did you ever notice you never go anywhere until you take a step? Yes? So a journey begins with the first step. So it's a willingness to say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shift myself, inner self, to a way of appreciation that is of a spiritual life. And it takes time to do that. Now Donald wants to add something. By the way, those of you brand new, we interact all the time. Okay? So just don't use nasty words.
So, a real good way to have forgiveness for those that you're struggling with, the terrorists, or all those bad people out there that are messing everything up. I think it was Plato, but I'm not sure the source of the quote. But the quote that helps me is, everyone seeks the good as they perceive it.
Yep. See, the key to it is perception. It's a perception. Thank you for the word perceive. So I make it, whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. See, you're under the effect of it. And people say, I don't believe that. Well, fine, I don't care. It's up to you if you want to live life in a productive way. It's been pretty well proven psychologically that your thinking runs your life. So all I'm saying is forgiveness and life is as we perceive it. So we all have a story about life, and we act out that story. It's amazing how many times, have you ever, we used to have a neighbor that I didn't like, okay, and then I moved and we had the same neighbor next door. Now they had a different face and a different name, but it was the same jerk, okay? And who was creating that? That poor person didn't have a chance. Didn't have a chance, okay? And I notice when I'm happy and joyful, people around me are happy and joyful. I used to go into work, and I used to work, and I'd do it just to practice. Go in and say, be happy. Good morning. Everything's great. People look at you like you're crazy, but then the day works. And then I didn't like to do it, but I go in and be negative. And the day was, I was going to use a nasty word. No, terrible. Okay. So if that's true. And the point is, try it. See, until you try it and prove it for yourself, or don't prove it for yourself, we don't know. And so it's a lifelong lesson that we are learning. One of the keys is 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's called the love chapter of the Bible. And to wrap things up, I'd like to talk about it. But everybody got this idea. It's an inner shift. And it's a shift that we must make. And we're going to decide to look on the happy side of life. And my inner shift is that I'm operating from spirit. I'm not operating from my ego. Now, we in Unity, if you want to use an evil power, Satan, we're saying that there is no evil power. It's our choice to allow the world to run us, and that becomes the Satan, which is on this shoulder, and the angels on this shoulder, whispering good things. So it's up to us which voice we listen to, because they are literally voices. Anybody agree? You got voices in your head, Okay, and we all do. And when you go to do something, the voice starts, oh, you better not do that. But if it's a voice of jealousy, anger, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, I'll guarantee it's from the ego. If it's a voice of love, appreciation, forgiveness, and all those positive things, it's on this positive side or the spiritual side of life. And the problem with it is, until you start working with it, you don't know it's there. So it's like, again, these are energies that you can't prove. So the only way is to incorporate them into your life and then produce in your life those things you're looking for. Anybody familiar with finding parking spots? Okay. Madeline and I have been looking for a house. We keep, it's amazing. I'll be driving down the street and I get a little voice, turn right. So I'll turn right and there's a house for sale. And so it's learning to listen to the voice of spirit. And as weird as that sounds, it takes time to calibrate that and start using that in your life. And the only way I can do it is encourage you to work on being in the silence, do an affirmative prayer, letting go and letting God, and start listening to this voice and not this voice. I do want to talk about love because love is the energy of spirit. Where is God? What is God? Excuse me. I made noises. Okay, this is 1 Corinthians 13. I'm going to just skip around in it. Though I speak with the tongues of men and angels and have not love, I am become as a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. Anybody familiar with people that are brilliant? Have all kinds of theories about life, and they don't work? I don't know how many times I have been led down the path. Because I've been on this path for years, looking into. I've been in all kinds of workshops. I went through Est, and I went through this, and I went through that, and I went through this, and spring, and spring tone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and a lot of people with pretty words that didn't work. Okay? So, that's one thing. Anybody familiar with silver-tongued rascals? Okay. Then it goes on and says, and though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I can remove mountains and have not love, I have nothing. So love comes through us. One of the things, and when I'm working with people, Madeline and I do counseling, and I'll hear people say, nobody loves me. And I'll ask, well, okay, good. Who do you love? Because love is an energy that comes through us and out through us. So it doesn't come into us until we put it out. So if you want love, what must you do? Put it out. Love, compassion, forgiveness, those are all steps in love. Okay? Then it goes on and says, and though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not love, it profiteth me nothing. Anybody familiar with that? I have all kinds of people that want to go out and save the world. You know what? We got to save ourselves first. And I've had people literally that give so much money away that they go broke. And maybe you've seen that, and I've seen it. Not all the time, but I even had, we used to do workshops on prosperity where we had people write out a check and to themselves, and they would deposit it in their imaginary bank. And I had people in workshops that couldn't even write a check for $100. I asked them to write a check for $1 million. People go nuts. Because my thinking is so limited, I can't see that happening. So it is love that makes these energies work and gets rid of the nasty thinking that we've harbored in our minds. Let me go on. Love suffereth long and is kind. Anybody agree that love puts up with all kinds of stuff? Anybody here familiar with unconditional love? Yep. Unconditional love means no matter what you do, I still love you. Which can be pretty tough sometimes, especially with family. However, those of you in committed relationships, do you agree with that? Because there's times, it's like, whoa. But it's always love. You're laughing.
She's seen us at work.
She's seen us at work? We just express. We express. Okay? And rejoices not in iniquity, but rejoices in truth. So don't rejoice in somebody getting revenge. rejoice. You know, the idea, he's going to get his. You know, and everybody talks about the law of attraction. What goes around comes around, so if you're nasty, you're going to get back, and we hope you do. What kind of love is that? So do you understand the switch? And I'm asking for an inner switch from this way of thinking to this way of thinking. And then I'm going to end up, I have a feeling I'm running over time. For now we shall see in a mirror darkly. This is the idea of consciousness. A mirror, by the way, is a glass, it's called. Okay? And I can't see myself because it's clouded with all my thinking. Okay, so as I clean it up through changing my thinking to a spiritual path, the mirror of who I am gets clearer and clearer and clearer. Because who are you at the root? God says we're created in the image and after the likeness of God. So when I look in a mirror, I should be seeing an expression of God. But the mirror is dark if my darkness is within me. And as I clean that darkness out, I start seeing who I really am, and life starts really working. For now we see through a mirror darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know, even as I am also known. So the great mysteries of life basically are being answered by saying, turn to my spiritual self. And as I cultivate my spiritual self, I know more and more about the universe. Anybody agree? People spend thousands and thousands of dollars looking for the truth. My family was one of them. We spent thousands of dollars going through workshops. You know, we're certified in this, and we're practitioners of this, but yet it's part of that mirror looking on the outside rather than on the inside. So I'm asking today for us here to look at our spiritual community and look at each other with love. Look at your families with love. Look at your neighbors with love. Look at those renegades, if you will, with love. Look at your political folks with love, because all they're doing is expressing what they believe. Do I have to agree with it? No. Okay. Some of you take a deep breath. Okay? Because that's what's true. It really is. And you gotta love it. Okay? And so I want you to know that I love you. I'm excited about our community here. We are gathering. More and more folks are showing up. More and more folks are saying, yes, I want to be on that path. More and more folks are ready to change the world, because we can't change the world out there until we change the world in here. The quote I use a lot, Lou Tice is a famous motivational speaker. The reason a lot of people haven't heard of it, he used to charge $50,000 just for a day to speak. And one of his famous quotes is, all meaningful and lasting change takes place on the inside first and works its way to the outside, which is what we're saying here. So thank you for listening. Thank you for making that inner switch. And thank you for making a difference in the world. Blessings. I'm finished.